And I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome just one of the best people to ask about all this kind of thing. He is a former editor of the Financial Mail. He wrote the hit book Steinheist, and he is now with Currency News South Africa, just one of the best financial reporters and journalists to talk to. Please give a very warm welcome to Rob Rose. I don't know if you even get such a nice welcome at your wedding, maybe.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what my kids do for me.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Rob Rose, thank you so much for being here. So, I mean, you probably know better than anybody how jaw-droppingly shocking these tariffs are. Like, I've read lots of different economists over the last week essentially saying that this is the biggest shock to the worldwide economic order since, like, World War II. Like, America putting these massive, very high tariffs on every other country in the world as the dominant economic player in the world will probably just reshape the global economy. It's not just about us, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, essentially, this is the biggest shock to hit the global economic order since COVID, since the crash, the big stock market crash in 1987, all the things you think of, the financial crisis of 2008. This is massive, so it kind of will reshape things. And it's fundamental because America's kind of led the world towards globalizing, towards freeing trade and trading with each other and just basically being nice people. And they're going back on it. It's kind of, they're entering an era of isolationism where they just want to trade with themselves. The whole point of Donald Trump's tariff regime is to build up, new steel makers in Ohio. He said, like, business is weak in America. So let's impose these massive tariffs, which is essentially just a tax to build up industry in America. And it's not going to work. It's never worked. And it's going to just cause a lot of disruption while he tries to do it.
And tariffs really mess up the country, right? So like in this case, America, like tariffs cause inflation and more expensive goods because suddenly you're asking American, makers of goods to make goods as cheaply and as high quality as other countries in the world that have been providing to America. And they've got no time to develop that technology, to find the workers to develop it. It just screws Americans, which is part of the reason why I'm amazed that he's done this, because, man, he loves being loved. And even MAGA Republicans don't love this.
Yeah, absolutely. I read a book about Donald Trump that said that deep inside, he just wants to be Madonna. He does want to be loved. So, I mean, the thing about him is that he thought that this would help revive American industry, but he didn't speak to the right people, obviously, because this is not what happens when you do this. Essentially, it's a tax. So what happens is your domestic buyers in America will have to pay massive tariffs. If you buy a South African good in America now, a South African, citrus, whatever, you'll have to pay 30% more as an American company, which will just increase the cost for the consumers. They'll pass that on, and the guys in the shops will have to pay 30% more for South African citrus, which just isn't smart because you can't just replicate that in 6 months.
Nachos are a very South African thing.
And apparently an American thing.
They just don't know how to grow them there as well as us. Okay.
Oh, they become president, you said, so.
Yes, exactly. So, Rob Rose, I've been really interested. We can talk about South Africa specifically in a second, but something that Trump's America has tried to do is make these seem like reciprocal tariffs. So we're just doing to you what you do to us. But that seems to clearly not be the case. I think South Africa's average tariff on American imports is less than 10%.
It's 7.4, yeah.
So why are we getting 30%? And then one economist on the dark place formerly known as Twitter last week essentially went, wait, guys, I think I figured it out. I think that they took the trade deficit between America and other countries, which essentially means how much more stuff America imports from a country than they export to that country. And they divided that by the value of the imports they're getting from that country and then divided by 2 to make the tariff. But that's got nothing to do with tariffs. It's got nothing to do with that at all. In fact, if you're the richest country on earth, it would be odd if you didn't have trade deficits.
Yeah,
you have the money to buy the best stuff from everybody else.
Yeah, it's completely bizarre. Like you said, it's almost this weird notion of an AI kind of stick it into a machine and see what you get out and think, oh, well, that'll work. But it bears no relation to the reality, which is why Lesotho has a 50% tariff on it, which is astounding. And that's because people in Lesotho aren't buying anything from America because it's too expensive. Instead, they're exporting diamonds and other things to America. So Trump looks at that and says, well, there's this massive trade deficit, so we have to impose this 50% tariff on Lesotho, which is just bizarre. I mean, the fact that there were tariffs on, the McDonald's Islands, places with hardly any human inhabitants, speaks to how crazy this whole thing is. So it's a hodgepodge of terrible economics, terrible mathematicians, and just a disaster for the world economic order.
3 things that I found completely hilarious. One is the herd of McDonald's Islands, which only have penguins on it, who now have a 10% tariff. So apparently the penguins are now considering exporting less fentanyl to America. The second one was an island in the south which only had U.S. naval bases on it.
It's
So
British.
Trump is just taxing his own naval bases. And the third was, I think it was Martinique that got a 10% tariff. Martinique, I think, is still a part of France. And so part of France got 10%, but France itself got way higher. Like, it's so dumb. But let's talk about South Africa. So it's a blank 30% tariff, but it's not completely blank all the way through, right? So let's first start. There are certain things that South African exports to America that, as far as I understand, are not going to get this tariff because America really needs them.
For sure.
Key raw minerals that they use in tech, I think.
Well, certainly platinum. They need platinum. We are the largest platinum producer in the world. So platinum, critical minerals that are produced in your country that you can't get elsewhere, Americans will buy that without a tariff. But then for cars, I mean, we have a big car market in this country. We make things like, I think it's the X3, BMW X3 hybrid. We're the only place in the world that makes it and ships it to America. So by imposing a massive tariff on that, it does spell certain existential issues for our car markets, right? Which is pretty big. And then citrus and agricultural goods are also pretty big. I think citrus is the largest part of the agricultural exports, which wasn't small last year. It was $13.7 billion that South Africa exported globally last year. So you're going to have a huge whack to those industries. I think they're going to see how it realigns. But I think the issue, Dan, is how long will Trump stick to this? And
He's pinky swearing on Truth Social that they're staying.
Yeah. I don't think anyone pinky swears on Truth Social. I mean, people just swear at Truth Social. But
and lie. Yeah.
the thing is that the stock markets have gone into a complete free fall, which means that I think South Africa's stock market was kind of not that badly affected, and we've lost 10, 12% over the last 3 days. And that means that anyone who's got a pension fund will have seen their retirement savings whacked, right? And that's not just, and we came off pretty lightly. So guys in the States, guys in China. Japan's been whacked. I mean, all the countries, Europe as well. So I think that there's a lot of pressure on Trump to ditch this and reverse this. But I just don't know if his ego is such that he can reverse any strategy that he's decided is the savior of America.
And I think, what Trump often really needs, like a school bully, he needs you to like kiss the ring to go back on something. But the world has not kissed the ring. And that's why this is different. China was like, you're going to give us 34%? Well, we're going to give you 34% straight back.
Yeah.
The EU is about to announce, I think it's around 20% tariffs. And so they're not giving Trump what he needs. And so it just seems like this extraordinary self-harm to America that's going to be really consequential. But I wonder on the extent to which this will affect everyday South Africans. Obviously, there are lots of jobs in our citrus and farming industries. There are lots of jobs in our automaker industry. I know that Tshwane was just about to try and create a huge new automakers depot in Gauteng, and now they may not be doing that. But to what extent will real South Africans feel this? Will this have a consequence of inflation besides our VAT increase that is probably coming? Do you think it will affect everyday South Africans?
I mean, to some extent, if they don't back down on it, it'll definitely affect South Africans because it'll cause a worldwide recession. So, like you said, inflation in America will go up, jobs will be cut there, and what America's still, it's the world's biggest economy. So what happens there does tend to affect the rest of the world. We'll have fewer people across the world buying our goods, even outside America. So you'll have less demand. So it'll also cause those kind of things to happen. Prices of things we mine, like platinum, will, obviously that'll still be exempt from tariffs, but we still have to mine it, and there'll be fewer buyers because they're all struggling. So there's lots of dominoes that get knocked down the line, which does lead to a much tougher economy. South Africa's been growing at like less than 1% over 10 years. It's been really struggling. So, we're dealing with our own kind of government of national unity issues. Then to have this on top of it is a real serious, stab in the chest.
Absolutely, yeah. 2025 has been 10 years worth of news in about 4 months, 3 months.
We had Trump and the GNU imploding at the same time.
It started with Ndlozi leaving the EFF. Sure. That was the first story of this year and all of that. And MK and Duduzile and all the things. Rob Rose, I want to ask, many people now say, well, this is good. The world needs to be less dependent on America. South Africa needs to find new export markets. There was a report that came out a few weeks ago, I think from one of the agricultural research organizations saying, we need to go find new markets. Maybe we go to Mexico, maybe we go to Southeast Asia. This is a good, motivator for us to go and do that. And there are other markets that exist. Now, I know you've said because a recession is almost certainly coming, there'll be fewer buyers. But is it easy to go and find new markets? Is it easy to develop that kind of stuff? Because I think if it was easy, we would have already done it.
Yeah, America has made itself rich on the fact that it's been buying stuff cheaply from the rest of the world.
Right.
So over the last, I think it's 30 years, the cost of durable goods, like just everyday stuff they buy, has dropped by 40% because of imports.
Wow.
So now they're reversing that. They're reversing globalization. They're saying we can support ourselves. And for the rest of the world to then find new markets is difficult. And China, for example, is someone we want to sell to, but they're not going to buy manufactured goods. They're not going to buy stuff that they'll make cheap at home.
Yeah.
So they'll buy our minerals, they'll buy stuff like that. But it's harder to pivot towards other countries. And America, you know, this has been a couple of months of crazy, but it's been the world's biggest economy for a while, and it has been doing quite well out of that. So what happens in America still, you know, America sneezes, the rest of the world catches flu. We're still in that position, and it'll take a while to kind of change out of that. And we want to change out of it, but it isn't easy, like you said.
Yeah, and I think for South Africa, it's obviously going to be challenging. America is now, these Republicans are having a review of our bilateral relations. They're very upset about Israel and Palestine and the ICJ. They claim to be upset about the refugees, but are they? It's tough to say. But I'd love to just have you blindly speculate now with no pressure to get it right. Okay, is that fine?
Yes, I mean, that's what I do the whole time.
So let's say Trump rolls back these tariffs in the next few months. Will a recession still happen? Will we just leap back to pre-tariffs a week ago? Because I imagine market confidence and the big people with big money around the world spending money have now been so roasted by Trump that how can they ever trust him again? And maybe that could lead to people being far more conservative with the ways that they spend. This has been really, really tumultuous. If he rolls back the tariffs, do we just go back to a week ago, or what might happen?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I mean, the thing is, like you say, it's rattled global confidence. People elected Trump thinking he'd be sort of good for the markets, good for stuff like that, and it's been the opposite. I mean, you know, I think a lot of people were you know, obviously quite sensibly wary of what Trump would do as a president, but I think that this massive uncertainty has completely rattled all investors in all markets. So when you build something in a country, like you build an oil well, that's a 30-year process. You don't just put it in overnight.
Yeah.
So when you think anything could happen tomorrow, you're not going to do that. It's interesting to look at what's happened in the States with the oil barons who all back Trump, who now realized what Trump has done is he's torpedoed the oil price. So now they're all furious at him, but they all backed him. They gave him massive donations for his campaign. And I think the people who supported Trump, thinking that it was going to be great for the markets and great for business people, are now facing the reality that it's kind of the opposite.
It's also super ironic because I think I'm correct in saying that the only country that did not get tariffs from Trump was Russia. And Russia finances its war against Ukraine on the oil price, which now plummets. So that's interesting existentially. And finally, Rob, I'd love to ask, if Trump sticks to his guns and keeps these tariffs for, let's say, a year, what does a global recession look like?
Well, it does mean there'll be, you know, joblessness, more jobs being lost in America. It means countries will be trying to find new markets for themselves like we are. It'll be a dampener on kind of growth. You know, we hope to get to 3%. The president's talked about 3% growth in this country, which means new jobs, and you need 3% growth in South Africa to actually do something about this hectic unemployment crisis. 1 in 3 people can't find a job. I mean, that's brutal. So you need to actually grow at 3% to be able to change that. And if you can't do that, if you're growing at 1%, you're not keeping pace with population growth, your country suffers. So you need to fix that. You know, I personally think it's going to take a few weeks, and Trump will certainly panic, and then probably back down on this to some extent. He'll make something that'll allow himself to back off while conceding not too much.
Okay.
But there's no ways that his cabinet and his backers will let this happen.
Well, you know, many cults let a lot of cult leaders do a lot of things, so I wouldn't be so sure on that. But I do, ironically, even though the news is bad, feel a lot better that you've come and explained it. Rob Rose, everybody. Wasn't he phenomenal? So